Welcome to episode 3 of Rambling Reference.
What happens when two librarians go for a walk?
This episode is Walk 15, Leach Botanical Garden to Mount Scott Loop in the 2005 edition of the Portland Hill Walk book by Lauren Foster.
So we went on our latest walk to, I think it was officially Mount Scott.
Yes.
But this sort of highlights where the Leach Botanical Gardens.
Yeah.
So it started there, and we went around the mountains called the Boring Lava Domes, which I guess for Oregonians are not really mountains, but
well, yeah, I was thinking about that.
Officially geologically mountains, so that's what we will call them.
We walked up and down hills and dales on the north side of Mount Scott. And then on the west side of the east peak of Mount Scott around the Willamette National Cemetery. And then we headed back to the Leach Botanical Gardens. And I think probably the biggest thing about this walk for me is I almost passed out.
Yes. But you didn't pass out.
Yes.
So that was good.
Thankfully you had snacks and water for me. Insert eye roll.
And it's good that we're in a neighborhood too. I mean, if something goes really wrong,
right,
we can, we have our phones, obviously.
Yeah.
We can ask neighbors for help. We wouldn't have been in the middle of nowhere, and I'm glad that you didn't pass out.
It was just a very oppressive day.
Yes.
I think, as well as being a very steep walk.
And there were a lot of steep hills on this one. We started out with that really steep hill.
Yeah.
We started out with the Leach Garden. As I said, I liked that very much.
I did too. I think we both probably really liked the fact that they had a burro named Pansy. Well, they not currently. The Leaches owned a burro named Pansy that they took on their forays with them, and we both also agreed that it would be really nice for us to have a burro
to carry your pack.
Yeah. I really liked the hydrangea that was planted all around the back patio. I think that would definitely be a good place for a wedding.
Yeah, that was a nice little area back there with the little cottage. It has quite an effect, looking lovely and sort of as if it's deep in the forest.
Yeah, it's the house is on kind of a steep hill, and so the back of the house is like right up against the hill. You can probably just like walk onto the roof. And the Leaches planted a bunch of plants at different elevations, kind of in their own microclimates.
They all seem to fit very naturally together.
Yeah.
It's not like you're walking through and suddenly, oh, this is very different. It's sort of, there are differences, but it sort of flows together very nicely.
I think Lilla Leach was probably incredibly skilled.
Yes.
Well, I mean, she had a lot of practice. She was a botanist, and she has a plant she discovered named after her. It's a small flowering shrub in the heather family, Kalmiopsis leachiana. And there's also a federal wild area named after that plant, the Kalmiopsis wilderness in the Siskiyou Mountains in southwest Oregon. That was a lot to pronounce.
It is a lot. I think you got it right. There was a big fire there several years ago. That wiped out a lot of that area, but it's growing back now.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, what hasn't caught on fire at this point?
Exactly.
And also, the Leach Gardens probably wouldn't be here if Mount St. Helens hadn't erupted.
Yeah, that was interesting to me too.
Yeah. She wrote about it much more dramatically in the book. But basically the YMCA had a camp on Mount St. Helens. It erupted, destroyed the camp. The Leaches had left the land, I think, either to like the parks or the YMCA.
I remember it being the YMCA.
Just the YMCA.
I think so.
Okay. And then meanwhile, the Friends of Leach Gardens had been trying to save it. The YMCA decided to sell the land for a development to raise money so that they could build a new camp, but then the Friends of the Library, Friends of Leech Gardens, got the parks commissioner to come out, and he's like, yes, we need to save this, and they found the money, and so they did.
And it's beautiful. Oh, and we saw a Venus flytrap. They had a Venus flytrap there.
Yeah, they had a whole bowl of...
Yeah, and it was really healthy and beautiful looking. I've seen them before. I don't know that I've ever seen one eat a fly in true life. It's too bad there wasn't a fly around there.
There's always recordings, but I don't think I've ever seen a live one either.
But we did see a lot of wildlife.
Yes, this was the wildlife trip.
The first thing we saw was a big old billy goat sitting on a wall, chewing his grass and just staring at us.
Yeah.
And he was not impressed with us at all.
No, he or she eventually slowly stopped chewing and was just staring at us. And then we walked through kind of a 2004 McMansion development. And I expected Stepford wives to all step out the door at once and look at us, see what we were doing. It was just, it was a very kind of odd thing for Portland. Like, it's just not what I'm used to seeing, I think. And also the AstroTurf.
Yeah, that was really weird,
That was really odd to me. I was wondering if maybe some, like, blight had come through.
Maybe. But it just all felt so fake. I mean, everything about the facades of the houses, and it was almost as if a movie studio had come in and set up this whole street for us to walk through, like in some sort of sci-fi movie where they're trying to fake everybody out. But then there were some houses that it was clear that they'd been there for a while. I think there was a yard that was like one of those designated natural habitats. Yes. And then there was another one that had just had some really nice landscaping and trees and stuff. You could tell some of the people cared very much about their lawns, and others wanted to be able to roll them up at the end of the spring. I don't know. Yeah. And also that reminded me of a website called McMansion Hell. And I did look at that. Thank you for sending that to me. Yeah, I thought it was really interesting how he was talking about like the voids and the fills, and just like how things are proportional or are not. And I liked that. So we could look at those houses and think there's just something wrong. Like they don't quite look right. But I liked that you were telling me about that, and that also sent me his examples. Oh, that's why. Yeah. He was just very specific about why it looks wrong. Yeah. Because it is wrong. It's bad architecture. Yeah, and warning, there is some swearing on the site. And then we went around the corner and we saw a doe and a fawn. Yes. It was so adorable, and of course we had to stop and just kind of stare at them for a while and take pictures. That's always nice. And then on Lexington, there were just some really great views of downtown. Yeah. What I found interesting about the whole area too, the neighborhood, other than the McMansion Street, was the houses looked to be more humble, a little more working class, but the area is so nice. It seems like it's probably just as expensive to live up there as in a fancy house down in our neighborhoods. Yeah. So that was interesting to me. That seems to me more like Portland, just more like working class in a variety of styles. Real old Portland. Yeah. And then we went into the Willamette National Cemetery, where I don't think either of us had ever been. I hadn't. I had done the walk before. Oh, that's right. You told me that, yes. So I had, but I was getting a little lost. I was like, where's the bell? I remember you I had seen before. Yeah. So yes, I thought it was interesting that national cemeteries started after the Civil War, and until then they would just bury soldiers wherever they fell. Yeah. So they decided they should have someplace nice, and this was very nice. Yes, it's beautiful. And let's see, the Oregon one is one of 147, we learned. Mm-hmm. And we have three in Oregon, yes. Yeah. And it had its first interment in 1953, and currently has 164,000 burials, or I guess people interred, in the ground and walls. Yes. And I
I had thought it was like a WPA project to create this cemetery, but I think they were just clearing the land because that happened way before it was designated as a cemetery.
You're right. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. They cleared it by hand.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Beautifully amazing.
Yeah, and I think this is where I discovered that I really like topographic maps, because I was looking at Google Maps and you can see like that part of that boring lava dome is just smooth and the rest of it is really like wrinkly, and it's just amazing that was done by hand.
Yeah, the whole thing felt to me like a piece of green velvet sort of laid out and rolling along very beautifully and smoothly.
I agree.
We were interested to find out that we weren't really allowed to walk in the cemetery, or at least we got that idea by a rule that was referred to in the book. Do you remember more about that?
Possibly it was an act passed in 2003. I did try to find a little more information about that, like actually going to the government site and looking for the law, but I didn't find it. But from the cemetery, like the government cemetery site at cem.va.gov, for the Willamette National Cemetery, it says rules of conduct: picnicking, jogging, and other recreational activities, and the cutting or removal of cemetery plantings and shrubbery are prohibited. So I guess like walking for pleasure is recreational.
I guess. Those other things I could understand, but...
Yeah.
And we didn't get in any trouble. Nobody said anything to us.
You know, I always think, like, why have a cemetery if you can't, like, if people can't go into it? Because, I mean, the whole reason to have a marker is so that you remember the people.
Yes.
Which we did, you know, actually take a look at some of the markers. So
I can see, you know, I've heard things before about, biking and jogging through cemeteries can be kind of disruptive, but walking, I think, seems perfectly fine.
Anyway, so the author recommended that in order to make your visit legitimate, that you fill out a comment card, and you pointed out astutely, as civil servants, we just love comment cards.
So we didn't do that.
Yeah.
We did not comment.
We also were kind of surprised to see the very lengthy rules about the flowers.
Yes. Very specific rules. And they are posted everywhere. Well, in several spots on the website, and then on several signs throughout the cemetery.
There was one on the trash can.
Yeah. It was mostly, you know, obviously about keeping it pleasant, keeping it nice, not tacky, and not dead flowers everywhere. So I could understand that. But yes, it's pretty specific.
And the no glass thing, that reminded me of the tour I took through the Lone Fir Cemetery. I actually took one of their guided tours. Yeah. And they were talking about how, like, modern markers, they have them just kind of laid in the ground so that they can just mow super quick.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So I have a feeling that's probably also why they didn't want stuff.
Yeah, they had very specific things too about the mowing schedule, so you would know when not to leave things. But I didn't feel like we saw a lot of decoration.
Not really at all. There were, I think we went there just after the 4th of July, and so there were, I remember distinctly, like, a couple of very patriotic, like, a lot of stuff on, like, one or two sites. So then after we went through the cemetery, we walked back on 118th and then on to Brookside. And I think we both agree that was our favorite street. It was really lovely. Yeah. It was really shady and cool, and Johnson Creek was running through the backyards and some of the houses, and all the houses just looked really cozy and tucked away.
I thought so too. A really pleasant neighborhood.
Yeah.
Very quiet. Not much going on. A couple of yard sales.
Oh yeah, yes. And unfortunately we were walking. And I really liked, there was this big, like, very big sculpture. I would say maybe like 7 or 8 feet tall.
Yeah, really tall.
Of a man with, he was very happy looking and had a very large brimmed hat, playing an accordion. And it was just like made out of cool rusted metal parts. Maybe from like a car or tractor. I was looking at it more. I was like, that kind of looks like
seemed sort of repurposed.
Roofing. And then there was the dog, which I didn't really remember.
Yeah, that was sort of just out of the corner of my eye. You know, I heard this dog barking ferociously and running up the drive, and then his owner said, "Leave it." And he came right back. So he just wanted us to know this was his neighborhood.
Yes.
And we were.
It was the very adorable
he was
attack dog.
He was a cute attack dog.
Yeah, and so then we made our way back to the parking lot outside of Leach Gardens, and that was it.
Yeah. Considering it's kind of a muggy day today, I feel like that walk is perfect for warm weather, except for the couple of really, really steep hills. Everything else about it was just sort of cool and shaded, and I really liked that about it.
Yes. As far as, it being strenuous, I highly recommend drinking water the day before as well as the day of.
So many things about this walk were interesting to me, and as we both said, we really liked it. But I was thinking about the thing that kind of struck me when we were in the cemetery was there were 4 markers to honor the 4 Medal of Honor recipients who were there. And of course, I've heard of the Medal of Honor, but I don't know very much about it. The 4 men who are buried there, so they each had a placard. They're all members of the U.S. Army. There was Lieutenant Colonel Stanley T. Adams, First Lieutenant Arnold Bjorklund, Specialist 4th Class Larry Dahl, and Sergeant 1st Class Lauren Kaufman. And they died. A couple of them were from Korea, one from Vietnam, and one from World War II. And they all apparently had done very valorous things from the stories that it told on the markers. So I thought that was really nice that they just showed that respect for being willing to give one's life.
Yeah.
'Cause that's not something, I don't know that that's in me.
Yeah.
You know, so I appreciate it in others. And even though I'm not a fan of war or people having to give their lives, I appreciate it, you know, and especially if they've done something really honorable and saved other people's lives.
That's pretty sacrifice.
Amazing to me.
Yeah, one of the plaques I read, the person had jumped on top of a grenade to save the rest of his troop, and that, wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really nice to see the plaques there honoring them.
And so I did a little more research because I didn't know very much about the Medal of Honor. It started as a naval award during the Civil War, and it was instituted as an act of Congress, so it's sort of officially known as the Congressional Medal of Honor, generally. So it started out with the Navy, and the Army was included later in 1863, and the Air Force in 1965, obviously. The Air Force was a little later.
Yeah.
The Marines are part of the Navy, so they fall under that, and the Coast Guard does as well. So there's 3 Medal of Honors. So they're all one, but the physical medals are a little bit different for each of those 3 branches.
Oh.
There have been a total of 3,507 recipients so far, but 1,523 of those were from the Civil War. So about half were the Civil War, and when they started giving it. So I think they may have just thought, they started it then. It was really a way to honor the folks that had given. And I'm assuming they were all Union soldiers, but I didn't find that out, so I should have. I don't think you give Medal of Honor awards to an enemy.
Right. Yeah.
But who knows? They have their own awards, I guess. Yeah. So I think clearly since the Civil War, they've been a little more
conservative,
exactly. They have very specific rules, which are not that interesting, so I won't go into them. So there have been far fewer since then. 71 of the recipients are currently living. So I thought that was interesting too. You do not have to die to get the award, which is good.
For some reason I thought that.
Yeah, in fact, of the 4 men buried in the cemetery, only one of them died and was given his medal posthumously.
Oh, okay.
One thing that I found very interesting was there was only one woman who has won the Medal of Honor.
Ever.
And that does not necessarily make me think that no woman has ever deserved it. But you know how those things go. Yes. So I tried to learn more about this woman. Her name was Dr. Mary Walker. She was a volunteer civilian doctor for the Union in the Civil War. She had been encouraged by her family in studying. She was very smart. They sent her to school. She became a doctor. So already very unusual for that time period. She tried to join the army, but she was rejected. You can guess why. Yes. Because she is a woman and they wouldn't let women in. So she decided to volunteer, and she became a surgeon for them. And she was a volunteer in the true sense of the word. She did not get paid for her time of her service. She was, in fact, captured and imprisoned by the Confederates. And later she was released. And after the war, she worked as a doctor for a women's prison. So her act of bravery was, in one of the sources I found, she had stayed behind after a battle to help Union soldiers, was captured, and perhaps they surmise she might have been kept because she was wearing men's clothing, and they thought she might be a spy. So because she was wearing something not suited to her gender, they kept her as a spy. And later she got traded back for another surgeon for the Confederates. So that's how she got out of prison. So she did prefer to wear men's clothing, apparently. When she was younger, she would wear the bloomer outfit.
Nice.
You've heard of that.
Yes.
And that was still something that not a lot of women wore, but it was a way for women to wear bloomer pants and probably make jobs much easier for sort of physical labor, or if you were a surgeon and trying to help a lot of people that were very hurt. So she continued to wear men's clothing after the war, and she was arrested for it on several occasions. So the things I read, the folks who wrote the things that I read weren't really clear on whether she just liked to wear them, if they were more comfortable, if she'd gotten used to it, or if it was maybe a bit of an act of resistance, because she also regularly spoke out against the laws that required women to wear, quote, women's clothes.
Well, good for her.
And obviously that's a change that has happened.
Yes.
we can in general wear whatever we like these days. But, not so much vice versa, actually. In Portland, maybe, but I think in the general Western world, men in stereotypically women's clothing is still kind of frowned upon, whereas women can wear whatever they want.
Yeah.
So we've got that one thing going for us.
Right. It's all worth it.
I also thought it was interesting. She had apparently been vocal against creating a law to let women vote. Not because she didn't think they should, but she thought the Constitution already allowed all citizens to vote. And that it should not have to be restated or specified in some way.
Wow.
Yeah.
She sounds like a pretty cool lady.
She's a pretty cool lady. So then, to make things worse, in 1917, and she was still living during this time, the government rescinded her medal and a bunch of others that had been given to civilians. Again, the rules were getting more stringent, and some people thought that those civilians should not have that Medal of Honor, so it was taken back. Dr. Walker, however, refused to give up her medal. She had worn it every day since she received it, and she wore it every day until she died a couple of years after that in 1919. But many years later, Jimmy Carter restored it to her in 1977. So
great.
That's another reason why Jimmy Carter is my favorite president ever. Because he did that wonderful thing, and he did it because her family, her descendants, had asked for that to happen, and
that's nice.
Clearly she deserved it. But she remains to this day, 150 or more years later, the only woman who has ever received that medal. And considering women have been in the service for many, many years and doing many brave things, and also are in combat now too. I it's weird because I feel like, I hope a woman will get it because she deserves it, but she's gonna have to do something to risk her life to do it. So I don't wish that on anybody.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a strange way to feel about it.
No one should ever get a Medal of Honor ever again.
Right. Yeah, but that would be great. Yeah. But if they deserve it, they should get it. So we'll see what the future brings. So that's what I learned about the Medal of Honor.
Cool. Okay, so I also found several interesting things on the walk, and unfortunately could not find anything out about that sculpture. One of the things that we saw on our walk that stopped me was there was a sign near the administration offices in the Willamette National Cemetery that read, "Blue Star Memorial Highway, a tribute to the armed forces that have defended the United States of America, sponsored by the Oregon State Federation of Garden Clubs, Incorporated." And I was really curious what it meant about highway, because clearly you can't have a highway through...
Sort of in a parking lot at that point.
Through a cemetery. And also, why would a garden club sponsor that? So here's what I found out. The National Garden Clubs Incorporated, originally called National Council of State Garden Clubs, the name was changed in 2001 to the simpler version, started in 1891. In 1944, at the end of World War II, like other public-spirited groups, they wanted to find a way to honor the men and women who served. They wanted living memorials that would beautify the country the service members fought for. So the New Jersey chapter of the Garden Club decided to plant 1,000 dogwood trees along a 5-mile stretch of highway designated Blue Star Drive by the New Jersey legislature.
And that would be so beautiful to see that in bloom. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And also with no billboards. Because apparently, like, in that era, there was a real pushback against billboards. It was named for the blue star that families hung in their windows to indicate they had a family member in the services. During World War I, a blue star banner displayed in the front window of a home told others that a family member was serving in the armed forces. It's also known as the service flag, and the blue stands for hope and pride. There are other colors. Gold is for a service member who has died, representing the sacrifice, and silver is for someone who was wounded and is convalescing at home.
So I have heard that one, the Gold Star service person,
Yeah. They've come in and out of fashion over time. I think the last time they were really popular was the Iraq War. There's also a program called Gold Star Families that provides services to families for families of fallen service members. In 1945, the New Jersey State Highway Commissioner suggested that this program be adopted by the NCSGC. It was approved, and, quote, a ribbon of living memorial plantings traversing every state, unquote, called the Blue Star Memorial Highway Program, was adopted. Then in 1947, Mrs. Frederick R. Kellogg designed the marker sign that is in every
So that's what
location.
We saw when we saw that sign.
Yes,
okay.
That is the original design. And when I was looking on the Oregon Garden Club website, I found out that you can actually order these signs.
Oh.
They're like, I mean, not like you as in us, but like garden clubs.
Right, okay.
And there is one place that makes them, and it's called Siwa Studios. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. They have a contract or something that they make all the markers. They are in Marietta, Ohio, and they've been in business for 90 years. They also make a lot of the historic markers you see all over the U.S. And I never really thought about who made those.
I've never thought about that either.
I just thought it was probably like the highway department or the state department, but it's like an actual
that's
company.
memorial-like is from that company.
I think they have competitors. Okay. I'm pretty sure, but I like the really nice ones that you see according to their website are from them. The name of the company is the founder's last name, Hawes, backwards. So that's why I was like, I'm not sure how to pronounce this. He was the first to use aluminum for historical plaques. And because it was cheap and durable, that made it easy to start a historical marker program across the country, which was his goal. He thought it would just be a really great thing to have in the U.S. Also, the font that they use on their signs is proprietary, which I thought was interesting. And he, I think it was the early 20s, he had a contest, I think, to see if someone could come up with a font that he could use, because at the time, no one made letters small enough for signs. That's something to do with case. I don't know. And it's based on the Caslon font. And each sign costs about $1,500.
I guess that's reasonable. I don't know what goes into it, but...
Yeah, they have videos on their website. You can search Siwa Studios and you can see them actually pouring the aluminum. Yeah. So then in 1951, the Blue Star Highway program was expanded to include all service members, not just World War II veterans. And then in 1981, it was expanded again and a new classification was added. It was a smaller byway marker, so they could be put in parks, civic and historical grounds. And then in 96, yet another marker was added to the program. It was a copy of the highway markers, but without the word highway. And that allowed the markers to be placed on the grounds of a national cemetery or Veterans Administration centers.
But the one we saw said highway.
Yes.
Okay.
So that that raised even more questions. Because it was like, how did this get put here?
Did they order the wrong one?
That was one of the things that I was wondering. I was like, well, clearly this was put here before 1996.
Oh.
Because that's when they added the the thing without the highway, just like the Blue Star Memorial marker.
Okay.
They introduced that in 96.
Okay. So I guess it was just there longer than that.
I guess, but if it wasn't supposed to be put in the grounds, how did it get there? Yeah, so it was, So that again raised more questions than it answered.
I guess there's no Blue Star Memorial police force out making sure everyone has their proper signage.
Yeah. So anyway, to answer my original question of why is there a highway right here? It's not actually a highway. It's just that's what the program is called. And if I were to try and find out why it's a highway sign, I would probably just email the Oregon Garden Club.
That's a good idea.
To see if they had the answer. So that was our walk.
Yes. So the good walk. Lots of interesting things to dive into. We sort of had to really choose and narrow it down.
Yes.
Thanks for listening.
On our next episode, we'll be rambling around Rocky Butte.